When it comes to puzzle games, they usually land on consoles with slightly lower than usual retail prices and can sometimes be quickly put together games, occasionally being direct ports of arcade hits. Rat Attack, on the other hand, seemed to be in development for years, and although it was always intended to be a puzzle game, the studio couldn't even decide on the final name of the game until the last moment. Arriving on the N64 in the year 2000, a year after the PlayStation 1 release, the game was formerly known as Cats and Rats, landed on store shelves from Pure, and it was published by Mindscape. The basic story is simple, and you choose from a number of Scratch Cats, who are a superhero force of cats who are attempting to stop a rat invasion. Prior to the game's release, a series of flash animation cartoons were released to add some backstory to the characters, but sadly these never made it into the final build of the game. Saying that though, the official website is actually still online, and so if you are interested in seeing what the cartoons are all about, you can see them there, and the website hasn't changed since prior to the game's release, so it's a true trip down nostalgia lane for those who remember the earlier days of the internet. Surprisingly, the PlayStation and N64 version of the games do play identically, however some levels have been totally redesigned with different textures, layouts and characters, and so even if you've played the PlayStation version, this may still feel like a slightly fresh game to play. And like all good puzzle games, Rat Attack keeps the gameplay simple and progressively gets tougher as you progress through the game. In short, you enter a world with a theme, and each world is broken down into smaller levels, and if you clear all of the levels, you'll then move on to the next world. The gameplay itself revolves around you trapping the wandering rats with a lasso type device called the Eradicator, and then you venture onto the destructor pad to dispose of them. The simplest way to describe this is almost like an update to the HAL Laboratories Ghostbusters game from the NES. If the rats get too close to you, then you can stun them with the Z button, but ideally you want to catch and dispose of them as soon as possible, as if you don't, they will destroy the room and you'll need to restart the level. Each of the game's levels have a quota of rats that you'll need to catch before you can enter the door and move on to the next. And like all good puzzle games, there are multipliers and items to help you rack up a score. Essentially, the more rats you take in one go to the destructor pad, the higher the multiplier you will get. Although if you do get hit with a huge stash of rats, then they do get the opportunity to escape. And so it's the basic risk and reward system that's worked so well in many other games before this. As you progress through the game, other obstacles and environmental hazards show up, which you'll need to dodge and move quickly to avoid. And this gives the game a nice difficulty curve, and so you'll rarely be reaching a point in the game where you'll be stuck and you can't complete a level after a few attempts. A highlight of the game was the perfect controls. On the N64 controller, it works perfectly with the analog stick, and you get a great sense of precision in your movement. With the only other button you'll really need being the A button, I'm happy that the developers didn't feel the need to fill out all of the other buttons on the controller with useless options. I also really like the visual style. Sure, it's not one of the better looking games on the console, but the unusual, almost Austin Powers style of the graphics is quite unique. The high-res textures look surprisingly sharp, but the character models and other objects on screen are not as well made, and so they often stick out noticeably when playing. Strangely, the North American box art shows the game as being expansion pack compatible, but the PAL release doesn't. With or without the expansion pack, I noticed no change, and I couldn't find any information as to why the box is that way. The camera in the game is also likely to give some people a little bit of motion sickness. It seems to slightly sway around, and although it retains the same viewpoint, it can at times leave you not knowing exactly where you are on the map. The music too mostly consists of very short loops of low quality MIDI music, and whilst it is fitting with the game's tone, it's largely forgettable, and it can become annoying if you need to redo a level a few times before passing it. Rat Attack would have been the perfect weekend rental. It's a short and somewhat addicting game, but after you've completed it and unlocked the 2 secret characters, there's absolutely no reason to go back to it. In the short, the game is a 3-dimensional puzzle game, but with 1-dimensional gameplay, so play it, complete it, and then never return to it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and until next time.